All right, hey everybody, this is Rosh, and you're watching Helix Basics. This is a YouTube tutorial series I'm putting together to help new and experienced users program their Line 6 Helix. So a little about myself. Once again, my name is Rosh, and I build and program guitar rigs for clients both here in LA as well as online. So my clients include Steve Vai, Leppard, Melissa Etheridge, Perfect Circle, Maroon 5, and more. And I wanted to give back to the Helix community and show some tips and tricks on how to program their Line 6 Helix Floor. So if you've been watching this YouTube channel, I've definitely put on a lot of fractal audio content to program the FM3, the FM9, and the XFX3. And a thing that a lot of people don't know about me is that I program all the modelers out there on the market, including the Quad Cortex, the Kemper, all the fractal products, and in this case, the Line 6 Helix Floor. So I want to give back to the Helix community and show some tips and tricks on how to program their Line 6 Helix. There's a lot of crossover content that's going to work no matter what modeler you use. There's a lot of best practices to get the best guitar tone and most functionality out of any modeler that you use, both live, in the studio, on tour, in rehearsal, and anywhere else you find yourself. So this tutorial is going to be dealing with the dual cabinets. So I've been hinting at this for a little bit, but again, in my opinion, the cabinet block is the #1 tone shaping tool for any modeler, and using the dual cabinet allows you to mix and match microphones as well as speakers. So what we're going to do is go through some the basics of that so that you can dial in and shape tones to your preference. So first thing that we're going to do is we're here in the factory preset. Let's just go to one of our blank user set lists. I'm going to navigate down to user 1, using the joystick, and I'm going to go down to user 1. And then what we're going to see is we have a bunch of new presets there. So I'm going to navigate to the right with the joystick, and you can either use the down or rotate the knob to pick a blank preset. I'm going to go to 01B and hit enter. And now we find ourselves with a blank preset. I'm going to navigate to the middle using the joystick. And again, this tone is not very inspiring. And I'm currently in snapshot mode. I'm just going to hit this button to go to stop mode. So the snapshots aren't going to be as distracting for dialing in this tone. Now, in the past, what I've done is, of course, when you hit enter on the joystick, you can go down to here, and you can select an amp and cab block. Line 6 definitely pairs, a cabinet with your amplifier. They have a bunch of go-to cabinets that pair with the amplifier. But now what we're going to do is we're going to actually use the amplifier and the cabinet separately. And the reason why we're going to do that is the cabinet block, for example, has dual cabinets in here. So first thing that we're going to do is actually going to put the amp, and let's build a clean sound. So I'm going to select the amp, I'm going to select guitar, and I'm going to go and scroll down to the Deluxe Normal. And this basically the Fender Deluxe Reverb. And one thing that you're going to notice right away is that this tone sounds really bad. And the reason why is, as you can see, there's no cabinet that this is going to be paired with. So right after the cabinet, right after the amplifier, we're going to also add a cabinet. So let's go down to the cabinet here. And you can see that instead of selecting a single cabinet, what we're going to do is select the dual, and again, navigate over. And now this gives us a list of all the cabinets that we can use. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the US 1x12 Deluxe. This is the Deluxe Reverb cabinet. And you can see that it has a default pairing with a 57 and some low and high cuts. And I'm going to hit enter. Now, as you can see, we have an amplifier and we have a cabinet separately now from each other rather than having one block do both. And using the page right and left buttons in this allows you to have access to the other cabinet in here. So for example, when we get to the third page right here, this is going to be the second cabinet that is in here. And this is going to give you all the parameters within this. Now, again, I will always say this, that it is much easier to edit in the HX edit. But again, if you do want to do this all on the front panel, this tutorial is definitely going to cover that. So by all means, feel free to follow along. So what we're going to do first is I want to page over to the second cabinet and just make sure that we're going to use the same cabinet. And again, the cool thing is with the dual cabinets, you can definitely pair different cabinets together. So you could feasibly use a Deluxe Reverb cabinet here, and the second cabinet could be something completely different. But in this case, what I want to do is I want to actually have the same cabinet, but I'm going to use 2 different microphones. So you can see here, we have a 57 dynamic, which is the Shure SM57. And in this case, it also defaulted to the Shure 57 dynamic. So I'm actually going to change this microphone to the 121 ribbon. And this is the Royer 121. This is a very common pairing where you have a 57 and a Royer. The ribbon mic gives you a lot of that mid-range from here, and then the ribbon mic's going to give you a lot of that low end and the warmth and the smoothness. So it's a very common pairing for a lot of different guitar tones that you'll hear out there on records. And I think it's one of the most common pairings that I think, they complement each other really well. So the first thing that we're going to do actually is go to the last page, and I'm going to bring the level all the way down for the second cabinet. So this second cabinet has that ribbon mic, and I'm taking the level all the way down because I just want to dial in the first cabinet first, okay? So we're going to go with some standard low and high cuts, and I'm not going to go too in-depth about this anymore. In this particular tutorial, you can view some of the other tutorials where I talk about the low and high cuts a little bit more in depth. I'm going to go to some standard cuts, so let's start with 80 and 8,000. And again, this is going to be just the 57. And cool thing is it defaulted to where I recommend most clients go to. They start at the cap edge, and if you need it to be brighter, move towards the center. And if you need it to be darker, start at the cap edge again. And then you can just move the, the microphone further out so the tone gets darker. So let's start with the cap edge right there. And the other thing that you can also do with the 57 is you can change the angle so it's slightly off axis, as they call it. I'm going to actually just change the angle to be directly onto the cabinet. So this is our starting tone. And you can hear that it's definitely got a lot more gain than I would like. So I'm going to navigate back to the amp block. Let's bring the drive down a little bit. Again, we're going for a clean sound. And here is, I'm playing a Les Paul. Here it is with a neck pickup. And I'm going to put the treble up a little bit, turn the bass down. Let's bring the drive up just a hair. And this is analogous to the volume knob on the Deluxe Reverb. So the leftmost knob, the volume knob on the real amp is going to also get a little louder, and it's also going to add more gain as the amp is cranked up. I think that sounds pretty good right there. And I'm going to put the channel volume up a little bit. Okay, so what you're hearing, I'm going to navigate back to the cabinet block. What you're hearing is basically where the 57 cabinet is. And you can hear that it's a pretty generic clean tone. Again, you might want it cleaner. I still definitely use the volume knob on my guitar to kind of to clean up a sound a little bit. And again, it's very touch sensitive. So if you pick lightly, or depending on what pickups you use on your guitar, you're going to get a variety of different sounds. So what we can do is go back. I'm going to just dial back the drive just a hair. Great. And let's go back to the cabinet. And now I think this position actually sounds pretty good for the 57. When I go to the bridge pickup, it's a little bit spikier, a little bit mid-range heavy. So depending on the type of, tones that I'm going to be using or what I'm going to be playing, I might want to darken that tone up a little bit. So I'm going to move the mic a little bit away from the center to darken the tone a little bit on the 57. Yeah, that's pretty good. And the thing I want to keep in mind is that I'm going to use this second cabinet to, add more low end and also round off the top end and make it a little bit smoother. So in my opinion, it's okay to actually make a pretty, bright, mid-range heavy dynamic cabinet, and then you can do all the smoothing and warmth and darkness from the other microphone and cabinet. And that's the advantage of using a dual cabinet like this. So if we start with something that's really bright, so this is the cap edge right here, and we move even further to the center, you can, of course, offset that by what you do in the second cabinet. But I will definitely just kind of do something around here. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Now I'm going to hit page right, and I'm going to start working on this second cabinet right here. So we're going to bring this cabinet all the way back. And again, what we're going to do is that we want to hear what this cabinet is going to sound like as well. So let's do some pretty standard high and low cuts. We're going to have low cut at 80, high cut at 8,000. And Again, I want to change the angle so that it's directly on the amp rather than off axis. And then, of course, we want to make sure that the position is somewhere starting at the cap edge. And again, the distance is as close to the grill cloth as I want. This microphone, the ribbon, is definitely going to be adding warmth and smoothness to the guitar tone. And what you can do is you can start with this all the way off and then start blending it by increasing the level on that knob right there. So right here, I'm on my neck pickup, all the knobs wide open, and you can hear the tone just got a lot smoother as opposed to when it's all the way off. You know, it's got more of that mid-range. So as we bring the ribbon mic into the mix a little bit more, you can hear that it just kind of warms up that tone a little bit. And you'll hear it even more when I'm on the bridge pickup. Right here, all the way off, it's really bright and brash. Not a lot of low end, but as we bring the level up to around here, you can really smooth out that 57. And now you have more of a full range tone. And for me, I do like a tone that's going to cut through a little bit, but again, that 57 is definitely a little spiky. And the cool thing is, now that since we're using two different cabinets, you can, of course, do different low and high cuts for them too. So if this microphone is just a little too bright for you, you could bring the high cut down, and it's definitely different than where the high cut is of the ribbon mic. So for example, here is the high cut at 5,000. As opposed to 8,000. And again, you can hear it's just shaving off a little bit of that top end. And again, that's going to be definitely up to you if you like that. 7 seems to be a pretty good point for me. And you can hear that I'm not even really using any of the tone knobs in the amp. I'm doing all my tone shaping in the cabinet block. In my opinion, this is always where a lot of the magic happens to get the best guitar tone. So you can hear that there's definitely a lot more, warmth coming from the ribbon mic. And again, you get this kind of full tone. At this point, probably wise to add a reverb because the tone is pretty dry. So I'm going to go to a blank slot, hit the joystick down, add the reverb, and let's use a mono reverb, dynamic hall. And of course, let's just dial back the decay a little bit and the mix. Just to add just a hair of, a little room to it, just so the tone isn't so dry. So that's a pretty, again, generic, usable clean tone. You can modify this with pedals and everything like that. So at this point, it would probably be wise to save our work. I'll just save it as new preset. And now let's dial in a crunch tone using the same kind of idea. So in this case, we did it with a clean tone. Now we're going to use a crunch tone for this. And so we're going to select the amp, go to the joystick, and instead of using the deluxe normal, let's go down and let's select one of the, the AC style amps, the Matchless and the Essex AC30. These are the kind of the Vox style amps. Let's go to the Matchstick channel 1 and start here. And again, one thing you do want to keep in mind is now that we're using separate amp and cabinet blocks, this cabinet will stay on whatever you dialed in initially, but you can, of course, change these around if you would like. So we selected the Matchless, and again, we'll mess with these knobs in just a short second, but I want to make sure that the cabinets are also going to switch over to the dual cabinets, but using a different type of cabinet. So you can select the cabinet of your choice, rotating the joystick knob right there. I'm going to use, let's see, the Matchless G25. And again, we want to page right over to this, the second cab. And again, I'm going to select the same cabinet. Now, you can, of course, use two different cabinet types for your guitar tones, but we're going to just kind of stick with the same type of cabinet and just using different mics to give a little bit of tonal shaping. And again, I'm here on page number 4. I'm going to turn the level down on the second microphone for a second as I dial in the first microphone. So we're going to go for a crunch tone this time, something that's going to be, in between, a clean and a full, rock rhythm sound. So let's just get the drive a little bit happening. So I'm going to dial that back, of course. I'm going to add the treble. I'm going to bring this cut down. Bring the bass down. And let's turn the channel volume up a bit. Okay, so we got our starting point right here, but again, in my opinion, the tonal shaping is going to all happen in the cabinet block. So the first thing that we're going to want to do, of course, is I'm going to turn the distance all the way down. I want the dynamic mic to be as close to the grill cloth as possible. I'm going to put the position, again, starting at the cap edge. If you've been following my videos before, I like to use the cap edge as a good starting point. And then I either move it closer to the center if I need the tone to be brighter, or move it away from the center to darken up the tone. And I'm going to go to some standard low and high cuts. So we're going to go to 80, and we're going to go down to about 8,000. And again, because we dropped the level on the second microphone, we're only hearing basically the first microphone. This is the dynamic mic. And now we're going to also go with a 0 degree angle rather than off axis. All right, so this guitar amp definitely has a lot more mid-range. It's a lot more cutting, so I'm going to move that microphone out just a hair. Now again, in my mind, it's okay to have a brighter dynamic mic because we're going to warm it up and smooth it out with a ribbon mic. So I'm going to move that just a hair back. Yeah, so we can definitely work with that. And again, if this tone is very bright or brash, again, we're going to smooth it out with that second microphone. So I'm going to hit the page right knobs. And this time what we're going to do is we're going to change this microphone to a ribbon mic. And then again, we're going to move the position starting at the cap edge. And again, we're going to, listen and adjust from there. I'm going to put the distance down to 1. I'm going to put some standard low and high cuts in here. So 80 and 8,000. And now what we're going to do is, again, just like what we did with the clean channel, I'm going to blend in the ribbon mic to see if it smooths out and warms up the tone and gets a little bit more of that low end and that smooth top end we're looking for to round out this tone. So you can hear right away, it just makes the sound a lot fuller. This is pretty thin. Especially for single notes, but as we bring in that ribbon mic, it's going to really thicken up the tone a little bit. I almost feel like I want to just go 0 dB on this one. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to mess with that dynamic mic position. It's still a little spiky for me, so of course, let's move the position a little further away from the center. And of course, we can always drop down the high cut if it's a little too bright for you. All right, so I feel like the ribbon mic is getting a little bit woofy in the low end, so we're going to just dial this back just a hair. Yeah, something like that. All right, so I think that is a great tone that's going to be pretty useful, again, for a crunchy kind of thing. You can roll your volume back. You can roll the volume up. If the tone is still too bright, of course, we can mess with the position. So here's the ribbon mic getting a little bit darker. Yeah, I kind of actually like it there. And again, we're going to just move this position a little bit further away from the center. And we'll move it back. I need a little bit of tone to cut through. Yeah, and for me, again, if you're listening and you're like, hey, that tone's kind of bright, I'm thinking in the context of a live band. I want the tone to kind of cut through and sit in the mix really well, right above the bass, right below the cymbals, right below the vocal. So again, I try to err on the side of being a little bit brighter. And again, this is a tone in isolation. You want to think of a tone in context of a full live band. And you'll notice that I don't spend that much time using the amp block at all. I just, get the drive right. And I always find that, for a lot of the different amps, the bass and treble knobs really more affect the feel of the amp than it is the real tone. So for example, the bass is at 4.3 right now. If I just crank the bass up to 10, it just gets kind of woofy and weird sounding. I don't think that would be a usable tone at all. So again, we're going to just dial this back down to about 4.3, wherever it was. And again, with these Vox style amps, the cut knob is really useful where you can just shave off that top end, especially if high notes are a little too shrill. So again, I think this is a pretty useful tone. Again, something that you can, boost with some overdrive pedals if you want. You can, of course, roll your volume back if you need it to clean up. And again, I think with the level of brightness that it has, it's going to definitely cut through the mix. So you can see that the dual cabinet block is really, really useful. It's going to be the biggest tone shaping feature of your Helix presets. So I would definitely recommend getting very familiar with these. In future videos, what we're going to do is we're going to definitely cover the, doing a rock rhythm thing, as well as a high gain thing, and maybe some lead sounds as well. And again, this 57 paired with the 121 is kind of a peanut butter and jelly kind of, pairing that is very common. So I think that's a good place to stop here for this tutorial. If you guys need any help programming any of your modelers, including the Helix, feel free to reach out to me directly and we could set up a session. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.